Welcome to Codex Rex, the video game history podcast. I am your host, Tyler.
And I am your co-host, Dux.
Each episode, we tell a story about video game history and culture so you can learn a little bit more about the games that you love. How you doing, Docs? It's good to be back again.
I'm doing okay. I'm a bit tired, but the tiredness is good. Tiredness keeps you present in situations that you... No, I have no clue. I'm semi-present in this situation. My mind is also floating around in other spaces that I can't really grasp. But I'm good. I'm saying that I'm good, and we'll just leave it at that. How are you doing?
Yeah, you sound like a guy who has two small children. That's what that reads to me.
Yeah, that might be correct.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Cruising along, still on the job hunt, playing video games, painting a miniature from time to time.
Cool.
My wife Andrea has really been into a game called My Time at Sandrock lately, and she's been pressuring me to play it. And
I have my time at Sandrock, and I'm kind of still letting it sit a little bit to find a good moment to play it, because I like the first part, My Time at Porsche.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to, if I catch games at the wrong time, I don't give them a fair chance. And I really want to give My Time at Sandrock a fair chance.
I am the exact same way. I will think of games, I'll start playing a game and I'll go, I hate this. And then I'll try it again 5 years later and I'll be like, oh, this is great. And it was the wrong game at the wrong time. And so I was streaming it a little bit lately, and I think I was looking for something more fast-paced. I don't know why I thought I was looking for something fast-paced in what is essentially 3D Stardew Valley, but I just kept getting hampered by and now you must build this thing and we don't tell you where to get this thing. And I was getting really annoyed, and I was like, maybe I need to change my mindset on what this game is.
Yep.
And kind of just enjoy existing in it rather than trying to race to the next goal I tend to do.
It's totally a vibe game. It's a game where you have to be fine with just exploring the place, and I sometimes struggle to do that as well, because I always like to check things in games. Okay, now I gotta do this, now this, now this, now this, and then optimize the path between them and be fine with it. That's why I love conveyor belt games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My favorite kinds of games always. If Steam sells me a conveyor belt game, I have to try really hard not to just buy it because it has conveyor belts in it.
Oh, you mean literal conveyor belts, not you're being led from one place to the other?
Well, I mean both of it. If a game has literal conveyor belts, but also if a game kind of iterates on the thought of just going through a to-do list and doing one thing after the other and optimizing a process.
I totally get it. But yeah, anyway, that's what I've been up to. Should we tell people where to find us?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, if you'd like, you can...
You do that. I never do that because I don't want to be found.
Squirreled away in your little hole, hiding forever from the greater internet. You can send, first off, if you have any questions or you want to send us episode ideas, or you want to tell me how much you hated the last episode where I just spoke about some weird teenagers for 3 hours, you can do that at codexrexpodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to come hang out with me, and to a greater extent us, you can find me on Twitch as Vegan Tyler. I stream a couple nights a week, and I do political streams from time to time. We have a Discord that we hang out in. Docs is often in there saying snarky things to people who say dumb shit with good reason. And you're welcome to drop by and hang out, and we'd be happy to meet you. So those are kind of the big places. Yep.
I'm really hard to like. I still understand why Tyler is my friend, but I sometimes can be manageable.
I think that you to some come off as abrasive, but I know that you're a super cool and super well-intentioned guy, and so I see the wonderful heart of gold under your spiny exterior, and that's why we continue to do these.
That's good. Yeah. Okay, let's continue with
I was going to say, this is the part where you'd say something really snarky about me saying something nice, so...
All right. I learned from having a job to shut up. And that is a skill that I have acquired recently. Just to sometimes just not say things. And that has brought me places.
It does get you far. Okay, well, let's dig into this. Let's fucking do it.
So from the last episode, I remember that we talked about two Johns, right?
The two Johns.
John Romero and John Cormack. That there was, and they were kind of rough childhoods, and they both got into computers and computer games, and then ended up at the same company in Louisiana called Softdisk, where they kind of got their own branch within the company to produce video games. And they had like a little team, Tim Hall, Tom Hall, another Cormac, Adrian
Cormac. Yep.
And Jay Wilbur.
You got it. Yep.
Yeah, and in the end, they kind of managed to port the graphics of Super Mario Brothers onto the PC in one night. And Romero is like, this is insane, because it's really crazy to port something as smooth as this, which only existed for consoles at the time, to the PC. This is all I remember.
That is basically the entire last episode. So, just to remind listeners, this particular episode is part of a series that we are going to do on a particular group of people and a particular company. In the previous episode, you can think of it as like a lengthy prologue about the folks who made those games, or rather make the games in this series. You do not have to listen to that episode. It gives you context for later ones. But we're going to assume that you listened to it, or you at least listened to this little intro. Okay.
It could also have been that you skipped the last episode because we gave a trigger warning in the beginning. This episode will not get a trigger warning, or at least Tyler promised me that it would not have any triggers. If I get triggers, Tyler,
that's on me.
Will start crying live on this podcast.
I hope you do.
Yeah.
Yep. That would definitely lighten the mood around here.
Yeah, very likely. Oh, but if you really skipped the last episode because of that, welcome, come in, and let's enjoy how this story continues.
Yep, and you'll figure out where we're going here soon. Okay, so as Docs mentioned, basically this team of folks, they decide that they're going to they've created this new technology that allows them to do side-scrolling video games on the PC, which was kind of unheard of at the time. And John Romero, he's very smitten by this, and he tells the team that they should start their own company, and they agree. Okay? So, let's pick back up then. Jay Wilbur thought that the obvious play with this technology would be to take what they had made to Nintendo. Okay? Because if they can they could basically port Super Mario 3 to the PC. And then Nintendo's flush with cash, and if they could port this to the PC, then that would fund their own projects that they wanted, right? So they have this sort of fledgling idea for a company.
I from what I know of Nintendo, and from what I've already know of Nintendo from the past, is I know very much that they do not like to tamper in anything that is not entirely their own. So they do not want their games ported to any other system.
It's like this. It's like where this is going. It is, yeah. The naivete, but okay. So they're like, this next project is going to be a Mario 3 port. Okay, they're going to take it to Nintendo. But there was a big issue. So they're still working at Softdisk, but now they have their own little side company, right? And they're like, if we want to work on the game, we can't do this during work hours, okay? Because they didn't have the equipment. So like they couldn't just go home and work on their home computers, and they kind of had modest salaries, so they couldn't just buy new tech. So they're kind of in a bind, okay? Plus, Romero does have 2 children and a soon-to-be divorced wife, and he's sending money back to them to support them. So they're in sort of this
conundrum. At least he's doing that. Good.
So what they did was during the week, Softdisk would close up shop at 6 p.m. and then they would all hang out and they'd switch over to a new directory in the systems and they would start working on their Mario port. And then on the weekends, they would borrow, with quotes, all of the work computers. So Carmack, Lane, Jay, and another programmer at Softdisk had been renting a 4-bedroom house in Cross Lake in Shreveport. It was a pretty cool spot that I read. 2,700 square feet on a half-acre lot right on the lake. There was a boat. There was a swimming pool. They would grill stuff. It was a nice place. I'm going to show you pictures.
Oh, nice.
So here is some drive-bys of the house. So, it's just like this little house, single story, like a lake house type thing. There's a nice tree in the yard. There's some old cars sitting in the driveway, right? And then I also have a picture here of what the lake looks like and sort of a little dock that they would go out on and they'd like get in the lake and do shit, right?
As someone who lives in a country where like single story houses are just not built, it's just not a thing. Seeing these American houses is always weirdly confusing. That's all the feelings I have about this.
Good, very good. So what they do is they take all these computers and they would throw them into the back of their cars and their trunk, and they would steal these computers on the weekends. And so they take the computers and they hook them up on a table that Carmack had been using for Dungeons and Dragons. So I have 2 more pictures here. This one on the left is kind of a famous picture that gets used a lot when we talk about these guys. It's like basically what the inside of the lake house looked like. You want to just tell me stuff you see, Docs? It just whatever train of thought you got going.
There's an electric guitar sitting on a couch that looks like it smells of butt. There's like tons of magazines on a table. The floor is tiled, which I'm not a fan of. So everything looks like a bathroom, right? I think there's like fabric on the walls. Fabric wallpaper.
I think those are blinds. Like fabric blinds you'd pull down. You see how they like curve there?
Yeah, this is interesting. And there's like computers everywhere on like improvised tables all around the windows, and all the blinds are down. And to the right you see people in a swimming pool that look like they do not spend a lot of time in. Like, what are they? Are they just standing in the swimming pool for the photograph and then just get back inside to play video games?
That is John Romero in sunglasses with short hair and Jay Wilbur. So I also want to point out on the left side in that left picture that I have for you there, there is notice that there's a Super Nintendo, right? Because they're doing the port of Mario 3. So you can see it there on that old right next to that CRT if you look very closely.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah, just in the back.
Yep.
Ooh.
Okay, so what they do, they hook up all this up to the table, and they began 72 hours of crunch mode. The whole team is there except Adrian, because they didn't know him well enough at that point to let him in on this like stealth mission where they're like stealing computers and like working with them for the weekend. And from what I read of this time, basically nobody slept for 3 days. Okay? It is this non-stop Mario fugue state filled with caffeine and pizza, and Jay is like grilling them all this food, and they use a VCR to tape themselves playing their version, they tape themselves playing the original Mario 3. And then they would play that back to themselves so that Tom could then make the elements of the game.
Yep.
And so at the end of the weekend, they had created an almost perfect recreation of Mario 3. Okay?
Just imagining, because on the picture you see these plastic or like maybe aluminum folding chairs, and just imagining that they sat on these for 72 hours straight gives me
awful.
back pain. Right? And thrombosis at the same time.
Oh, to be 22 again. Right?
Yes.
I carried some groceries home last week and my shoulders still hurt. I carried groceries home. I was like, what the hell is happening to me?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it.
Disintegrating.
Yeah, that's how that goes. All right, so this is what it looked like. It's a pretty solid recreation of Mario 3, if you've ever seen Mario 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
Down at the bottom, they gave themselves the logo from when they were working with Lane from their company Ideas from the Deep, right? And it has like a little dolphin there, like a
Very
little
angry
dolphin swimming
dolphin,
around. Yes. So they send it out to Nintendo in a box. And they send out sort of like, this is what it looks like, this is what the port is, and they ask for permission to port the game. Nintendo gets back to them in three weeks.
Do they get a letter from a lawyer back to just stop doing
that? It was nicer than that as far as I'm aware. Nintendo says they have no intention of entering the PC game market. They would not take them up on their offer, and that they were going to keep their intellectual property on their proprietary console. Basically, in any other word, get bent. The crew is bummed.
That's right? What I imagined. Yes.
Yep.
For anyone that is not aware of this, Nintendo has been well known for doing this ever since they existed, because they have a very tight grip on their IP of like Nintendo in general. So up to this day, they do not allow outside people to interfere with Nintendo on all Nintendo's products, and they do not want their products to be moved onto any other consoles, which has been more and more difficult ever since things get more cloud-based and consoles get more like easy to port to each other. But Nintendo is still holding this stance.
Absolutely. Yep. They love to keep things within their own sort of ecosystem and run things their way. And, there's something to be said for that, but it does make it a little hard to break into some of their IP. So, this doesn't work out with Nintendo. Around this time, the fall of 1990, Romero starts to get fan mail at SoftDisk. If you remember, earlier in I think the first episode, I mentioned that Romero had ported one of his games called Pyramids of Egypt to PC. Okay, I think I showed you a picture of that, like a little thing where you crawl around in a pyramid. Okay. He starts getting
Pac-Man-esque, right, where you had to kind of evade a snake and collect these things and to get to the next level.
Right.
Yep.
So he gets these letters, and the first one is from a guy named Scott Moliere. Okay. And I'm going to show you this letter, actually. Okay? We don't have to read the whole letter. But it says, Dear John, I loved your game, Pyramids of Egypt. It is better than another pyramid-type game. Oh, what a great game it is, and it's super cool. Can you please call me? I think I found a bug. Blah, blah, blah. Just this weird fan letter that's very strange, and it looks like it's hastily written. And he's like, okay, cool. I have fan mail. It's weird this showed up to SoftDisk, though, right? Because, my name, there was no address to send this to. And he's like, but, whatever, cool. I got fan mail. And then he starts getting more. And he's hanging them up on the wall, and he's showing everybody, look at all this fan mail that I got. And all this fan mail, what it does is it asks him to get in touch and to call a number or to send a letter back. And, I just really want to mention that for game developers at this time, it was exceedingly rare to get fan mail, let alone at your job. And the discs that they mailed out every month didn't have an address, so.
As someone who works IT adjacent, my first thought when I read things like this is always, this is phishing. And of course, this concept didn't exist at the time, but my thought at the moment, and maybe this is wrong and this will turn out to be completely harmless, but this is like someone that wants to do something bad to him, wants him to get in contact so they can do something like surf him or something. I don't know.
Did you say surf him?
Like serve him legal documents.
Serve. Okay. I'm imagining I'm imagining someone taking
pronunciation of things is not up to your particular American standard of saying words.
I was just confused. I just imagine this person nefariously trying to take John Romero out into the ocean to use him as a surfboard. I was like, what do you mean he wants to surf him?
Yeah, I'm gonna make this man call me, and I'm gonna put him out in the ocean and stand on his back. And he's gonna gurgle all the way up that wave and down that wave.
That'll teach him. That'll teach him to make cool games I like.
Yeah.
So, all right. So one day John Romero, later, he's reading a magazine called PC Games. And he runs into an article about a 29-year-old guy named Scott Miller. And the article is about how he is doing quite well in the video game distribution business with a business called Apogee Software. And in the article, he had an address listed for his company on a street called Mayflower Drive in Garland, Texas. And Romero's reading this, and he has this minute where he goes, wait a minute. Why do I know that address, right? Why do I know Mayflower Drive? And he looks at all the fan mails taped to his wall, and every letter is signed by a different person, but all of them originate from the same place, the address in the magazine, Mayflower Drive.
I see.
Romero's first instinct is that he's pissed. He thinks someone's fucking with him.
Yeah.
Quote, what the hell was going on? Who was sending me these letters? How the hell had I not noticed this before? I didn't understand what his problem was. Was he a freak? A stalker? A practical joker? Was he trolling me?
Yeah, like this immediately feels nefarious, right? That someone is doing something, is planning like a tiny little conspiracy just around you.
Yep. To make a long story short, he decides to write a letter to Scott Miller. He chews him out for messing with him. He writes a letter back like a...
Yo, Scott, fuck you. What do you want?
Listen here, you stupid fuck. So he writes this really angry letter, and then he sits on it for a day. And then he writes a second letter that is a lot more calm.
Just whenever you write letters or emails that are filled with emotions, this is always a good strategy. Let it sit, read it again, and then throw it away and write a nice letter.
But weirdly, he doesn't throw it away. He puts both letters in the envelope. And
he should have let it sit another day, maybe.
And he basically, it's kind of like, hey, here's a nice letter from me, but I'm just showing you this first letter as an example of how pissed I was. Like, what the fuck's your deal, basically?
Oh,
and he gives Scott Miller this number at Softdisk where he could be reached, okay? And a few days later, the phone rings. It's Scott Miller. Here's Scott Miller. Okay, here's a picture of him.
Okay.
I couldn't find one from when he was younger, but this is an approximation of what Scott Miller looked like. He looks like a regular dude.
Looks like a dude, yeah.
Just looks like a dude. Okay, Scott Miller calls. He wants to talk to Romero. Romero's still pissed. He starts angrily asking him about the letters, and Scott says, fuck those letters. The only reason I did that was because I knew my only chance to get a hold of you was to go through the back door. See, Scott wanted to poach Romero from Softdisk in order to bring him to Apogee. So he knew how difficult it would be to actually speak to Romero without Softdisk finding out, and he was convinced that if he sent something to Softdisk, that Softdisk would screen the letters. So he sent fake fan mail to try and lure Romero out to be like, ooh, I'm getting in touch with this fan who thinks I'm great, or oh, he found a bug, I'd really like to fix that, whatever it was, just to get him in touch.
Super clever. Wow. This guy should work for the CIA or something.
Yep. So, Scott has Romero on the phone, and he tells him he wants to publish Romero's game, but he wanted to do it in a different way. He tells Romero that he had cracked the code for computer gaming distribution, and that he wanted Romero's game to be shareware. Now, to all of you who did not grow up in the 80s and 90s, if you wanted the latest game, you had a couple of ways you could get a game, okay? You could go to the store and hope that they had the game you wanted at the store. Or you could order it in the mail if you had someone who could do that for you. You often couldn't order it directly. It depended on the company. Okay? So it's kind of sometimes hard to get games. Shareware was a style of software distribution where you host the software to a bulletin board and then anybody can download it. Okay? And then you might say, hey, if you liked this, give us a donation. Or if you wanted more, like updates or a better version or something like that, you can pay us. And when it came to games, this might be more levels, more features, more weapons, whatever the fuck it might be. The whole thing relied on word of mouth, but it was very low cost to distribute your software by giving someone a taste of it, hooking them on it, and then having them hit you up and sending them the rest, right? And I would bet that some of you who are much younger than us might hear this and go, well, isn't that just like a demo, right? You just play a demo and then you go buy the game. But there wasn't really demos in this way at that time.
This is also like today, if you are like a developer for like an open source tool, and open source tools are often distributed freely, but you will also often add like a feature that will give the software tool that you're making a significant boost. So you basically create an entire software box and have like one segment of it that will be relevant to certain people and that you will sell. Right. This is kind of similar. This is kind of what shareware developed into, or one of the things that shareware developed into, while shareware does not really exist anymore in that sense. Like, of course, what you say, that there's still demos and then you pay for them, but I feel like it's still gone. Like, I remember that it was still there when I was a kid, but
yeah,
it doesn't feel the same.
And I feel like what was really interesting was, like, you know, I remember going to the store and paying like some tiny amount of money, $5 or something, to get, it'd say 900 games or something, and you'd get it home, and they were all just like shareware games. They were like, They took all the free shareware games off the internet, put them onto a disc, and then you'd play like one episode of something, and then like you if you wanted to buy the rest, you'd have to call the company.
But Scott is right. The best way to sell a game is to give people a taste of it. Because you can claim anything you want. If people don't have the feeling of it, they won't buy it.
Yep, absolutely. So Scott had been trying out this method. He told Romero he had self-published a game of his own, a roguelike called Croz, which was what the PC Games article was about. It was about him and that he had published this game. And Romero had read about it. He gave away the first episode of the game for free, and that he tells Romero that he had made $150,000 just by word of mouth alone on this game. And he used that momentum to quit his job, start the company Apogee, and he wants Romero to come in on this. And so he offers him a deal. If Romero would let him publish Pyramids of Egypt, he would give Romero's team 45% of the royalties. This is so much higher than other publishers of the day. This is wild.
Didn't we once talk about the rates, that they were like often only 15% or something? Like really low?
Right, I think sometimes it'd even be like 10, right? Like really bad.
And then the publishers often wouldn't even pay them out until years later.
Yep. Yeah, so this is really good stuff. Romero tells Scott, he reminds him that he can't do that because Softdisk owns the rights to Pyramids of Egypt. Okay, they've already put it on their disk. And then he says, quote, "Hey, screw that game. It's crap compared to what we're doing now." And he sends Scott a copy of the demo of Dangerous Dave in the mail. And Scott is floored. He is just floored. He calls Romero again, and they decide that the team would make a game specifically for Apogee that would be distributed as shareware using this new tech. Romero's like, okay, well, if Scott is making money hand over fist, maybe we could get some of that too. So he talks to the team. Okay. And this was the opportunity that they had been looking for. They do a few things. First, they all sit down and they make a decision. Are they going to stay at Softdisk or are they going to leave? The decision that they make is both. Work at Softdisk by day, work on their games at night. And they decided that they needed a name for their company. Quote, "We had named..." You want to take one last guess before I tell you?
I like off episode, I guessed Sierra. But I was sure it wasn't Sierra because Sierra made different games. And now I'm thinking, didn't Ubisoft start with side-scrollers? And wasn't Ubisoft really... Like, they did Rayman, right?
I think they did Rayman, yeah. But that was a PS1 game. I think that was later.
Oh, right, okay.
We're still very early 90s here.
Yeah, we just watched later. Tell me.
Good guess, though. Quote, we had named our little D&D team. Okay, this is from Romero. Remember, they're playing D&D. We had named our little D&D team In Demand as a joke. We were level 3 peons, and no one ever needed us. But IDF, Ideas from the Deep, and the moniker...
Are they going to be ID games?
They are going to be id games.
Games, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The moniker ID for In Demand seemed destined to stick with us, so Tom suggested that we go with id. It was a Freudian term and described the primitive instinctual part of the mind, a way that we hoped our games would connect with players. We decided to add software to it. Looking back, we could have used entertainment, studios, games, or something else more interesting than software, but that is what most companies did back then. I often hear people pronounce id as ID, but that is not correct. It's id and rhymes with did.
I always say ID
you had to make sure
but
you
now
knew.
I know that I'm wrong. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, this means that we are going...
Where are we going?
Towards Bethesda.
Are we?
ZeniMax stuff.
When does that happen?
I just know that id Games is kind of Fallout related, but this isn't Fallout or... I don't know. Fallout was started by other people. I don't know.
I will tell you, you are simultaneously close, but also very far away. So
I mean, I'm here to listen, so let's keep going.
Yeah. No. I'm just I'm genuinely interested at where you're at. How many times have you had me on an episode and I'm like, yeah, I have no idea where we're going with this. So, but id Software, we're talking about id Software. And then around this time, the team decides that it is time to part ways with their friend Lane. Romero did not think that he had the drive.
Lane is still part of it.
Lane is still part of it, but they're like, he just doesn't have the drive for this. He doesn't like the PC. He's not in their D&D group. They're not really hanging out with him much. They leave him out of the deal.
I completely forgot. Didn't he quit his first job with Romero because he hated the PC too much? And then he just joined Softdisk, which only develops for the PC. And then he just had to hang out with him. And he was like the biggest Apple edgelord.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh boy.
So he's finally out. Goodbye, Lane. So he's out of the deal. They get the terms from Scott. 45% royalty on every copy sold. Romero tells Scott, hey, if you're serious about this, you need to send us an advance. Okay? Like, let's put your money where your mouth is, buddy, if you really are this big. And Scott sends them a check for $2,000. And when the check shows up, they're like, okay, this is legit. Like, they put it in the bank. It's real money. So they do some math, and they determine that if they make enough money from the deal to pay their rent 2 times per person on the team, okay? Like if they basically had 2 months rent ready to go, that it would be enough for them to leave Softdisk. So for context of how low their living expenses were, Romero said that everyone's living expenses they guessed were on average were about $400 a month per person total. Okay, that's everything. That's rent. That's food. That's everything.
Yep.
But for
really low.
now, that's very low. But it was also the early 90s. For now, they would have to stay. Okay, they're gonna have to stay at Softdisk. And they start thinking on game ideas. They decide that the games that they're going to make for Apogee are going to be a trilogy. The first game would be free, and then if you liked that game, it would be a complete game. If you liked that game, you could buy the other 2. And they wanted to use something that would use their new technology, so they decided to make a console-style platformer. I'm going to gloss over this just a little bit, but Carmack's idea for the game was this. It would be about an 8-year-old boy genius named Billy Blaze, who would transform into his alter ego, Commander Keen. He would be facing off against an alien race called the Vorticrons and going on adventures in space. It would be like Looney Tunes style art. It would be kind of silly, a little over the top. Tom Hall writes up this goofy intro on the spot. He reads it to them aloud in this over the top Tom style voice, and they love it. And they're like, cool, we're doing this.
Like a B movie. Yeah, sounds cool.
Yeah. I was trying to see if I had anything here, but I just have stuff on Slordax. We'll leave that up here because we'll get to it in a minute. Mm-hmm. Remember Slordax from the last episode that they were working on? Okay. Yeah. It's late in the 1990s late in 1990 at this point. In the day, the team would work for Softdisk, working on games for the Blue Disc. Every night, they would borrow the Softdisk computers and take them to the lake house to work. Jay started requesting new computer parts from the administrative department at Softdisk to upgrade their machines so that they could work on the sort of high-caliber video games that they wanted to make in their spare time. And Big Al is just like, whatever these guys want, they get. Like, they're gonna break us into the gaming market. This is great.
In my mind, Al sees his ship sinking for a while, and he just puts everything on this one card. And just, what can he do?
Right? He was really in a bind. From October to December, they worked basically nonstop on Commander Keen in Invasion of the Vorticrons. And they wanted it all out before Christmas. They settle into their roles. Romero and Carmack would do all of the programming. He said that they would work on games literally for 16 hours a day. They would spend 8 hours on Slordax, and then when they were done, they would spend another 8 hours on Commander Keen. I have Slordax here, some pictures of Slordax if you'd like to see. Slordax, the unknown enemy. It's a shoot 'em up with
It's a vertical
aliens.
scroller shoot 'em up, yeah.
Yep. I played it actually in preparation for this podcast. I found the sound effects to be incredibly grating, but it's just because, it's an older shoot 'em up kind of game on the PC. But I gotta say, for what it was, it ran well. The background scroll, the little aliens were kind of interesting. It was a fun little shoot 'em up thing.
Wait. Did I? No. My mind is I'm listening to you, and on the side, my mind is racing. Like, what was ID's big game? What was its big game? And I'm like, was it Doom? Are we doing Doom?
Are we doing Doom, Dogs? Does it fit?
It would fit the violence, but it's 3D. It's pseudo 3D.
And it would fit shareware.
It would fit. I think it could be Doom. I think we're doing Doom, and I think that is still its game, right?
It's absolutely its game, but you're not going to hear about it for a couple of episodes.
Oh yeah.
That's like kind of some of the culmination of their work. Yeah, we're doing the Doom. We're doing the Doom.
Okay, nice. My mind was always like, what is it? I know it.
Yes. When you think back to that first episode now, right? Doesn't some of all of this make sense, right? Like, and we will dig more into...
You mean the shooting
Doom.
and the explosives?
The gore at the hospital and the deep-seated trauma, the love of first-person adventers, right?
Dude,
like wanting to see it's all there, dude. It's
all
all
the
there.
enemies dissolve in Doom when you shoot them. Yeah, I see it.
For context, I won't spoil too much for everybody, but it'll still be a little bit till we get to Doom because we're going to do this episode, and then there is another very interesting thing that comes between Doom and what we're about to talk about today that is worthwhile of its own episode. So we will get to Doom soon, don't worry. If you are listening to this and you say, I just want Doom, hopefully you're listening to it in a time in which that has been recorded and you can just go listen to it and ignore everything else. Or don't, because, we put a lot of work into these, so. Okay.
So I at least guessed the game. Fine, good.
You did guess the game.
Yeah.
Yes, congratulations. So from October to December, they work basically nonstop, like I said. Okay. They decide that Tom is going to be the lead designer on Commander Keen, and he's going to work on all the gameplay elements and do all the graphics for the first trilogy. Adrian wasn't a full part of the id Software team at first, but they decide that they are going to bring him on in the end to start making some of the creatures that would appear in the later games. Okay. And Romero really gives like a really rosy idea of this time in his book. But I also really think that Romero doesn't like to make waves. Okay, so I'm just noting that right now. So Romero refutes this, but there is reporting in a couple of different places that says that maybe Adrian was kind of having issues with how cutesy this game was, and that he secretly hated working on Commander Keen, but he kind of didn't want to say no, right? And It's also maybe
The
reported,
intern mindset, yeah.
right? It's also said that maybe he and Tom didn't really vibe well totally sometimes, but Adrian didn't like ever say anything to him about it. And like, I'm not sure if any of this is real. Like some of these publications as the years have gone by have really tried to like drum up the drama for like excitements, but I just thought I'd note it. And like Romero says that if Adrian was miserable working on Commander Keen, he never told anybody about it.
I have the personal feeling that Adrian would be the perfect main character for a dramatization of this whole thing, even though there already is a dramatization. But I think Adrian would be good because he has this weird outside, like JD in Scrubs, this weird newcomer perspective.
Yes.
So he would be a good main character through whose eyes we could observe the weirdness of it all.
Yeah.
And how he doesn't actively try to be part of it, but he just can't get away from them.
They just keep asking him to do more stuff, and he's just like, sure, okay, if my boss says it's all right, sure.
Okay, yeah. Did you ask Big Al?
Yeah, Big Al's on board. He's all about it. He's buying us new computer parts. We're great. He says we can blast heavy metal music until 3 a.m. if we want. Like, who cares? We really need this. Big Al really needs this. So they spend most of their time programming. They're making these games, but they do other fun things too. They play video games. They drive around to the lake in a boat. Jay's cooking everybody food. Carmack's running the D&D campaign. In the game, they were part of an adventuring group called the Silver Shadow Band, and sometimes they would work for another group that was called Justice. The name of the group was called Justice. They would ride around on a silver dragon, and they would adventure with another character who was named Quake. Quake had a hammer and would destroy buildings, and a device called the Hellgate Cube that would float above him and shoot lightning bolts. Romero said that looking back, the most fun that they had playing D&D was when they were fighting alongside Quake. Romero started chatting with a woman at this time named Beth McCall. Quote, she had a calm and easygoing demeanor, a thick southern accent, and a pleasant laugh. They would talk about what they were working on for Softdisk. She was on the production line sending out finished discs into mailers. He asks her out on a date. She accepts. Your face.
This guy. I do not support any of his shenanigans.
He gets up to so
he
many.
might have made history, but not in my book.
So he asks her out on a date. He's dating this woman named Beth. On October 30th... Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just dying from your disdain. On October 31st, they finished Slordax. The story for the final game went like this. It has been 7 centuries since the cruel race of super beings known as the Slordax were thwarted in their attempt to conquer the galaxy. Now, the Intergalactic Defense Alliance has detected that the Slordax are gathering once again in the Slordian system. You must pilot the fastest, deadliest ship in the galaxy into the realm of the Slordax in a dangerous first strike mission to annihilate the alien threat before they become too strong to defeat. Strap in, pilot. It's gonna be a bumpy ride.
Okay, I think they still have to do some, like, they need some, like, creative people on board. Well, I mean, I think they're doing this on purpose, right? This is, like, purposefully, like, silly.
Yes. For sure. But this was a big deal to them. This was their first game that they made as a team. However, the game comes out, and due to an error in Softdisk's art department, it only had John Carmack's name listed. You can see there in the picture, it just says by John Carmack, right? They start working on their next game the following day. They have no time to stop. Like, game is done, too bad. You don't get a fucking break. Immediately, next game. They start working on a game called Shadow Knights. For that, they would use a scrolling technology from Commander Keen, okay? And Romero said that working with the code during the day, because he knew how Commander Keen worked, it made working on both games easier, right? Because he's like playing with the code for like double the time now. But at Softdisk, Al starts to get a little suspicious of the Gamer's Edge team. Jay is just constantly requesting computer parts. The team is getting really weird and kind of distant. One day he walks in and they're all huddled around a computer. And then when he walks in, they close what they're looking at and they all kind of scrambled. And he's like, something's up here. And supposedly, Al tried to talk to Carmack a couple of times about this, but in some of the reporting on this I saw, Carmack was like allegedly very rude to him, and he would tell Al things like, "You've got a lot of terrible programmers here. They just stink."
Oh, man.
And there's like a whole bunch of other things around this time that are attributed to Carmack, but I will say, just because both Romero and Carmack dispute this turn of events, but I just thought I would note it. It has showed up in a couple of places. Keep that in mind. The team crunches away. The death schedule returns. They stop sleeping. They stop showering. They stop eating unless they are forced to. Scott, their publisher patron, sends them $100 checks each week to spend on pizza. So that every week they open up the mail and there's a check inside. And every time they would get a check, Jay would hold it up and yell, "Pizza money!" And then they would buy a whole shit ton of pizza and just basically become disgusting and gross.
It should have clicked earlier with me since we've been doing this podcast, okay. But there's like I think the game development industry is well known to be a very toxic workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if people that are like that are the people that, not all of them get successful, but people that get successful are people like that. If they become employers of other people, I think that will nourish a workplace where it is very difficult to have like a healthy like relationship with your work. So it makes a lot of sense, the problems that the gaming industry has at the time, because these people are the ones in power.
Yes, and that is very prescient, Docs, on issues that will arise later. So a good meta thought there.
Yeah.
Romero, quote, "In hindsight, I know this schedule sounds nuts, and the fact that we did this to ourselves may even seem even nuttier, but at the time, this didn't at all feel like work. We were chasing greatness, and we ran as fast as we could. We knew someone would get to the finish line, and we wanted to get there first." So this is like this competitive streak in them that they're like, we have to do this as quickly as possible, as good as we can.
And they are right. Some others would have done it.
Yes.
If they didn't. And it was a thing of just a year or a few years before other people would have gotten better than you.
Yeah, for sure.
Because this time frame was the time where like huge leaps were made in game development and graphics and game design.
Absolutely. Yes, things were advancing so rapidly that, yeah, if not id, then who, right?
Yeah.
So let's actually talk about Commander Keen, okay? And let's talk about the gameplay of Commander Keen. We won't spend too much time on this, but it's a side scroller. You control Commander Keen, who is a kid wearing red shoes and a football helmet. I have some pictures here for Docs to take a peek at. Also, I didn't mention this in the beginning of the episode, but I have put together a PowerPoint presentation that will be available for you to look at. If you want to follow along with all of this, you can look at all of the pretty pictures and follow along. Or if you don't, we'll do our best to describe them to you. No pressure. Okay, Commander Keen. He's a kid. He's wearing red shoes. He's got a football helmet on. Apparently, these were references to things Tom Hall used to do as a kid. He used to run around in this like Green Bay Packers helmet. So like they kind of styled it off of him as a kid. You can move left, right, and jump. And then eventually you'll get a pogo stick, which is down there in the bottom right. That lets you jump higher. The enemies are a mixture of various alien creatures and robots. Some of the enemies can be stunned by jumping on them, but then in the first episode you get a gun and you can start shooting enemies, and enemies, when they're killed, they like actually die, and then they just like their dead bodies remained on the screen. And this was a purposeful choice by Tom, who thought that if they were going to put a gun in a game, that they should teach like children that guns have consequences. And so there's just like dead aliens littered about.
The Poké Stick reminds me of, I don't know the name of the metric, but there's like a metric to measure the quality of a Metroidvania game, even though these are not Metroidvania games, is how long does the game last before it gives you a double jump as an ability?
I had never thought of that.
Because all Metroidvanias eventually have to.
I would say that I don't know that I would call this a Metroidvania, but progression was non-linear, right? So it wasn't like level 1, level 2, level 3. Like you could find secret levels, it had exploration, it had hidden stuff. And like I'll lightly skip ahead to some stuff I had to talk about this, but each of the 3 games had 16 levels. Romero said that they had a blast. They're trying to balance difficulty, but they also wanted it to be like something that everybody could pick up and just kind of enjoy. So it wasn't super hard. They're creating the world. They're hiding all this stuff. And then Tom came up with this entire galactic language that you could find in the game. And if you figured out how to translate it, you could translate all the signs that you saw in the game. And so
neat.
the messages contained all kinds of jokes, messages, instructions, stuff like that, right? To promote this, Scott started flooding some of the bulletin board systems to advertise for Commander Keen, and people were interested. Now, the part of the reason that there are so many secrets in the game was because Scott told the team that some of the replayability of Super Mario Brothers, which, not that this was Super Mario Brothers, but it did steal some elements from it. He tells them that some of this replayability is finding secrets, okay? And so he asks them, will you put secrets in the game? And then they do. Now, one of the things that they did was put goofy advertisements in the game for Commander Keen games that didn't exist. Okay, so like fake Commander Keen games. But then they added in something else too that they hid in the game. And it was a poster called The Fight for Justice. I will read to you what is in here. Do I have the poster? Oh, I do. Oh, okay. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. It doesn't matter, but here's the important part. As our follow-up to the Commander Keen trilogy, id Software is working on The Fight for Justice, a completely new approach to fantasy gaming. You start not as a weakling with no food. You start as Quake, the strongest, most dangerous person on the continent. You start off with a hammer of thunderbolts, a ring of regeneration, and a trans-dimensional artifact. Here, the fun begins. You fight for justice, a secret organization devoted to vanquishing evil from the land. This is role-playing excitement.
A bunch of kids talking about how they want to do a campaign where they only play level 20 characters.
Yes.
And they never do.
Yes, exactly.
They just never do.
And so, like, I should note, they actually wanted to make this game about the character Quake, and they pondered what it would be like. Here's Romero chatting about it. Note that this is slightly ahead of the timeline. It's like right after Keen, but we'll finish up Keen. Quote, we imagine Quake as a proto-God of War-like character battling huge enemies, our D&D adventures made real. However, we had just shipped our first 2D side-scroller, which in itself was a huge innovation. The distance between what we just shipped and what we envisioned? Light years. We wanted to put more on the screen and to give the player substantial agency in their gameplay, but CPUs were still slow, and the technology available couldn't match the game in our heads. So they're limited by tech at this time and what they want to do. So again, I'm a little ahead of the timeline. After Keen, they work on this idea for a couple of weeks. They drop it. They're like, we're going to put this on hold. We'll come back to Quake later. Okay. Commander Keen. They're so excited to be working on this game. I cannot understate the sheer fervor and joy that came out of these people at this time when I read stories about it. One story goes like this. Carmack is working alone at the lake house, and a terrible storm hits and floods all the nearby roads. Apparently, the water was so high that the ski boat that they would go out on had gotten to be on top of the lake house. Okay, or of the boathouse, rather. Really bad. Nobody can get in or out. Jay arrives. He sees how bad the road is. And he just turns around and leaves. He's like, fuck that. He just leaves. Romero pulls up. It's even worse than when Jay arrived. Okay? Carmack resigns himself to working alone all night, but then the door whips open, and Romero is standing there completely soaked from head to toe. He had waded through the torrential downpour, the flood, everything. He comes in, he takes a shower, he gets to work on Commander Keen.
Awesome. Amazing. Maybe they should have also kind of worked on saving the house from further damage, but that's maybe their lack of father figures in their life.
Could be. I think that they were probably renting it, so maybe they didn't care.
Fuck it, the landlord can take care of it. This is not our problem.
My god. No, not at all. Okay. On December 12th, 1990, Commander Keen was finished. I have... Okay, the what would be the like the box, even though it didn't really have a box release at that time, and then sort of like the title screen, Commander Keen, Invasion of the Vorticrons, right? The box to me, when I look at this, is like so 90s colors, isn't it? It's like that, like bright pastel. Go ahead, you're gonna say something.
Those wiggly arrows too, and the font, it's just out of control. And the colors make, it's just use all the colors, but like weird versions of them. Don't use the normal colors. Just wiggle them a bit.
And it says the height of gaming excitement, right? Yeah. Love it.
And all the writing has like shadows behind of it, like the shading effect. Just because you can, and it looks cool, but it doesn't improve anything.
Yeah. If memory serves, I think this was actually from a later release, but I thought it was fun to illustrate what that looked like.
Still very iconic.
Absolutely. And so the game's finished. While everyone else is sleeping, Romero goes to the post office and he ships the game out. Scott Miller receives it 2 days later, and he posts the game on that day, December 14th, 1990. The first episode, Marooned on Mars, was free, as I mentioned, and you could buy the other 2 episodes, The Earth Explodes and Keen Must Die, for $30. When you ordered them, they would arrive on floppy disks in plastic bags in the mail. Scott said that he was normally making around $7,000 a month from shareware software at that time, but in the 2 weeks before Christmas, close to $30,000 came in. Okay, whoa. Big jump. And almost all of that money had come from Commander Keen purchases, with a very limited advertising budget that was just on some bulletin board systems and a couple of ads in some game magazines. Romero says, quote, "The response was immediate and remarkable. PC Magazine said it, quote, has a Nintendo feel, end quote. Also praised that the graphics could scroll, and that really set it apart from other games at that time. Other places, again, said it felt like, quote, Nintendo came to the PC. So they really got what they were looking for there, right? PC World called it, I love this, one of the most spectacular games available. I guess, they just really didn't... just like the bar was not that high.
There wasn't a lot of spectacle in that time.
Hey gents, look at this. It's called Commander Keen.
Especially for being what could you do when you were a kid? You'd go to the arcade and wait in line to play 5 minutes of Pac-Man.
Absolutely. People praised the game's humor, how it was accessible, it wasn't crazy difficult. Nobody had seen a side-scroller that worked as well on the PC before. Scott started getting a barrage of praise and inquiries. These messages would tell him how great the game was. They wanted to know if there was going to be more. And Scott decides he needs help. The story goes that he recruited his own mother to help him take calls, and then decided that that wasn't enough and he needed more help. So he recruited a teenager named Sean Green to help him out as a full-time employee. When Sean walked in, Scott's mother is standing there in a bathrobe. She has a phone in each ear. She hands Scott a phone that she just hung up from, and it instantly rang. He would come into work every day at 8 a.m. and there would be people already on the line ready to order, and the phone would ring literally nonstop until his shift was over.
So how did he meet Sean? At the grocery store? What's your name, kid? My name's Sean. Do you want a job, Sean? Yes, but you have to ask my boss first. Okay, Sean, you're the intern now.
Yes, that's how things get done.
Yes.
Okay.
I bet Sean didn't get paid.
Sean did get paid. Sean got paid, yes.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Okay. The team was absolutely thrilled. They threw a huge New Year's Eve party at the lake house that year, and they invited all of their friends. But there was a different kind of excitement that hit 2 weeks later. Jay opens the mailbox and he finds a check from Scott. And if you remember, every time a check from Scott would come, they'd open it up, they'd wave around, they'd go, pizza money, right? So he pulls the check out, he goes, pizza money. And then they all look at it. And instead of being for $100, it's for $10,500.
Yeah, that's
totally different vibe.
Good for them.
Yes. None of them in all of their lives had ever held a check for that much money before. They passed it around amazed. They were like, holy shit. And they start thinking, okay, if we're making this kind of money, then we can do it, right? Like this meets our budget requirements that we had set for ourselves. We can quit Softdisk. We can start our own company.
What was their budget requirement? Like they have to pay 2 times their monthly
expenses,
financial requirements, expenses. Yeah.
Yep. So, and I think if I remember, it was like something like $400 a person per month is what they estimated their expenses to be.
So 5 people times 400. So they wanted $2,000.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Plus times 2, so $4,000. So yeah, they even doubled that. So they are good. Yeah.
Yeah, they're set, and they can set money back. So the problem though is that they were like, okay, so we want to leave Softdisk. How would we tell Al? How would we tell Big Al? So even though they were still, they were making Commander Keen, the team was still like on the side putting out games for Gamer's Edge. And so around this time, Softdisk has around 3,000 subscribers, and those subscribers were paying somewhere around like $70 a year to get these discs, right? So this entire program depends on the team. Without them, it wouldn't exist.
And it was all written on Al's hardware, so...
Well, that's true, too. That's true, too.
Not really ethical, what they've been doing.
You have hit on something we will touch on. So, Romero and Carmack are both kind of collectively like, we kind of don't care, right? Like, I don't want to say that they were like totally callous, but they were kind of like, this is their chance, right? Like this is bigger than Softdisk. And the others had kind of mixed opinions though, right? Like maybe a little of the morality of such things is coming into this. And Tom starts to worry, like, what if we get sued? To which Romero replies, dude, what's Al going to do if he sues you? You don't have anything for him to get. All you have is a piece of shit couch. I mean, what the fuck? What are you worried about losing?
Nice, Romero. let's take the concerns of your coworkers seriously. Oh boy.
Oh, such a whoa, what are they gonna do? Take your fucking couch, you fucking loser, right?
Oh boy.
Yeah, so, and Jay is also worried about how things are going to go down with Al, and he's like, if you're going to tell them, like he tells Romero and Carmack, he says, don't drop a bomb on him, right? Like, it's clear like Jay likes Al, and he doesn't want to hurt him. But before they talk to Al came to them. Because one of his employees had mentioned something to the gamer, like something to him about the Gamer's Edge team was making their own games on the side. And Al knew that Carmack had a hard time lying to people, so he confronts Carmack. And Carmack just tells him everything. He told him about the computers, he tells him about the games, and then after that conversation, Romero and Carmack go to Al and they tell him that they're going to leave, and not only were they going to leave, but they tell him that they're going to take Adrian with them. Like, Adrian doesn't get a choice.
They didn't even ask Adrian. Adrian is just Adrian is like, guys, I live here. My mom is taking me to dinner. Adrian, shut the fuck up and get in the car. You're coming with us.
You belong to us,
Staten
Adrian.
Island.
You are our intern now.
What do you have to lose, Adrian? Your fucking swamp and your fucking alligators?
Oh, what? You got a bunch
of man.
You got a bunch of pictures of mutilated people in the ER? Oh no, your collection of illegally stolen photos. Woo. Poor Adrian.
Boy,
I have to ask my boss. I have to ask my boss about that. We're your fucking boss now.
Adrian is still, like, just in my imagination, Adrian is still part of id Software,
Mhm.
and he's now like one of the executives, but he still doesn't have anything to decide because everybody just makes him do stuff. and
The interns
he's
come
just
to
not
him and
fast
order
enough.
him around.
Oh, poor guy.
Okay. So,
I think Adrian for me is the most sympathetic guy
I agree.
because he until this moment has done not even the worst things. Like, the worst thing he did was steal like pictures of very disgusting wounds of people from the hospital.
Yeah.
Which
Right.
is bad, but okay. Fine.
So, Romero and Carmack, they go to Al, right? And Romero says to Al, I know this is not an ideal situation, and I'm totally grateful for everything you've done, but the soft disk model isn't going to work for us, end quote. And Al, he's just floored. He's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening, right? But ever the businessman, after a few moments, he comes up with a counteroffer. He says, why don't you go form a new company and I'll sell your games, right? So if you have to leave, go, but I'll sell your games. And then what we'll do is we'll split everything 50-50. I'll manage your business side of things. And most importantly, I won't sue you. And they're like, wait, what
That's
the fuck?
very important.
Right? Right? And they're like, wait, so we just told this guy that we're leaving and instead he's like, cool, I'll finance your business? Like, we could just pass all of the taxes and distribution off to another person? And on the surface, they're like, this sounds pretty good, right? Like, they hash it out. And in this plan, Al would move programmers over from the Big Blue Disc over to Gamer's Edge, since those were the only programmers in his company. The id guys would train the new programmers, get them up to speed. And Al's like, okay, cool, I think this is going to work. Like, I'll go talk to the other editors. And then Al goes back to his office later, and the entire 30-person staff at SoftDisk gathered to speak with him, and they want to know what's going on. Apparently, Romero and Carmack had come back to the office bragging about the deal that they were getting.
These guys are such idiots. It's incredible. Okay, I have to change my opinion. Like, after thinking about that, I think Adrian is the most sympathetic. I think they're just all idiots. I think every one of them. I think I'm not even, I can't, like, I'm not defending Adrian. He's just as bad as any of them. And now they get a good deal that they get out of a good-hearted L, Big L, that just tries to like keep, like, people have, like, he believes in freedom and people can do business, and he's just old enough to understand that you just gotta move forward. Even if bad things happen, like something you learn when you get older, that bad things, you still gotta keep working. And they think that this is just their luck again. They're like their fucking fortune that gives them, like, that makes them invincible. And they just go back to SoftDisk and they treat these people subhuman and brag to them. I'm not a fan of id Software, and I will not become one.
We'll see. We'll see if these episodes wear you down or how you feel by the end of this, because
I've played Doom, John Romero, and I enjoyed it, but I will not enjoy this game anymore.
now Docs hates Doom 33 years or whatever after it came out.
I do not separate the artist from their art. I cannot do that.
So anyway,
okay, let's get back. Okay, there you go.
Romero and Carmack. No, it's okay. Romero and Carmack come back and they're like talking about this deal, and it's not sitting well with everybody. And so the staff is there and they're like, wait, so like the guys who were cheating the company are getting half of a new company and a bunch of money. Like, why would you reward that? And Al told them, because it's good business, because these guys are good. But the staff was not having it. Why should these guys get to do this while everyone else then gets saddled with more work? Because if they leave, it's not like they're going to hire new people immediately to fill that in. They're going to move other programs over. Now they have more work to do, right? And so the entire staff says, it's either them or us. All 30 of us will quit right now. Al goes back to the Gamer's Edge office. Right? Like,
and that is why you unionize. Very, very
ding,
smart.
ding, ding. Hey, I just want to say as a side note, I really think we didn't talk much about this recently, but there have been a lot of video game companies and voice actors and such that have been unionizing lately, and I just think that's fucking awesome. Keep it up, gang.
It's really good.
Yep. Al goes back to the Gamer's Edge office and he tells them the deal's off. That they had created a nightmare for him and that he couldn't lose his entire staff. Quote, "I can't do it. They said they will all quit and I'm really screwed." What happened over the next couple of weeks was a lot of negotiating and talk of lawsuits. What they settled on is that the team would create a new company on their own and they would contract with SoftDisk. They would still keep working on the Gamer's Edge project every 2 months as they had planned, but instead of being like on staff, Al would just pay them $5,000 a game. Many on the SoftDisk staff were displeased, right? Even the id staff was a little displeased with how this turned out. But how it all sort of falls together is that the id team says that this meant that they wouldn't have cash flow problems and that they wouldn't be, they were still beholden to SoftDisk, but not in the same way. Okay.
Yep.
So I'll note, there's a little bit of a dispute over whether or not this happened, but I'll in one account, Al tried to talk to Carmack before he left, and he tried to remind him, like, do you like realize that you're hurting people around you? And he said, "Did you ever think about the people who have worked so hard and supported you?" And supposedly Carmack replied to him, "I don't care about them. I'll go back to making pizzas before I stay at this crummy place."
Oh, Carmack. He's like, Goodwill Hunting.
Yeah.
Like he's got a gift, but he doesn't see that there's more to life than his gift or his cool life or stuff like that. There's the people around him and the feelings that he has, and that he has to like let go and let like accept who he is and accept that he appreciates others.
Yeah.
Poor Carmack.
I think that it's a big theme throughout all of these episodes in the story of id that a lot of folks say that Carmack just really struggled to relate to other people. And that if you remember all the way back to like the first episode when they were talking about like the psychologist writing about him, like boy behaves like a brain with legs, right? Like, I don't know that that's like an astute, like, I don't think that's a perfect observation of John Carmack, but I think that he was really focused on his work and really focused on being good. And so just like a lot of social skills reportedly just like weren't there, at least in some of the early days. So something to keep in mind. In February of 1991, the team officially created their new company, id Software. Here is the logo. Wow. It just is id Software.
Such a nice logo.
Incredible. Here's where things stood in their world right now. The new company was just Romero, Carmack, and Adrian. Jay and Tom decided to stay at SoftDisk for a while. Tom felt bad and wanted to at least stay until they got him a replacement. Jay had been working on an Apple II project that he wanted to finish. And so they would all still hang out, and like all these people are contributing to games. They're all still playing D&D together, right? It's all still like the team is like together, but some of them are still working at SoftDisk. Okay, they didn't all leave. Okay, so they set up the lake house to be their new office. They went to Sam's Club. If you don't know what Sam's Club is, it's a store in the U.S. I think it's owned by Walmart, I think, where you have to have like a membership. Kind of think like Costco. You can buy like large amounts of things for cheap. And
okay, yep.
They picked up 3 brown $40 folding tables that would be their desks. And then they used some of the money that they got from Apogee to buy similar computers to the ones that they had at SoftDisk. So, they take some money, they get their own hardware, they don't have to steal from, SoftDisk anymore. They put all their desks relatively close together so that they could communicate, but also exchange disks quickly, because you couldn't send someone a file over the internet. You'd like literally put it on a disk and hand it to them, right? And then they'd have to put that floppy on their computer. Yeah. And they greatly enjoy their newfound freedom. Every morning, Jay would leave the cabin and head to SoftDisk, and Romero and Adrian would come over around 10 a.m., and then they would just work until they couldn't work anymore. Carmack dug himself into programming so that he could work on the next iteration of his graphics engine, the Keen engine. Everyone just had this enthusiasm and excitement that they're working for themselves now. And even though they had this commitment to SoftDisk, it was freeing. And so they decided that they needed some roles at the company, just out of necessity, just to figure out who's going to take what role. They decided that Carmack would be the president, Adrian would be the VP, Tom would be the secretary, and Romero would be the treasurer. And I have to tell you, when I read this is like so funny to me. Like I used to be like the president of a couple of different clubs in my college days and even in my grad school days, right? Like different organizations. It feels like, hey guys, we're going to get the video game club together. Who wants to be treasurer this year? It's a very important spot. You know?
Oh yeah, wait until that time that they commit like tax fraud and the treasurer gets into real trouble.
Yes.
And faces real prison time.
Given how much this has turned into a true crime podcast, maybe that's not so far off. Okay, so when figuring out equity at the company, there was an early issue for Romero. Because Romero, Carmack, and Tom all got 25% of the shares. Adrian got 15, and Jay would get 10 because Jay was in the evenings. He'd come back from Softdisk and he would balance their books for them and sort of take over their money stuff. Romero went to bat for Adrian and said that he should become a full partner. Carmack immediately said no. He's like, no way. But Romero kept pushing and basically said, look, we wouldn't have made Gamer's Edge what it was without Adrian. Adrian was like consummate professional during this. He worked just as hard as all of us. I want him to be a full member. And Romero eventually wears Carmack down and they make Adrian a full partner of the company with full shares.
Carmack was just worried that there was another Carmack with equal pay. So they, and because like, Carmack is president and the other Carmack is vice president. It's Carmack and Carmack. And if both Carmacks are paid the same, you can't really tell who president is and who not.
That's true. You could confuse them.
I bet.
Yes.
I want to make some Office reference where John Carmack tried to name Adrian Carmack assistant to the president or something. But I don't. Maybe you don't get that joke.
I know the joke, even though I haven't seen a ton of The Office. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So with all of that settled, they needed to figure out what they were making for both Softdisk and Apogee. Okay, so they've got Commander Keen out, and then they still have these commitments to Apogee. Their first game was a follow-up to Romero's 1988 game Dangerous Dave. This one was called Dangerous Dave in the Haunted Mansion. I have pictures here. I have played this game, actually. Briefly.
So it looks like there's like a dude. He wears a Make America Great Again hat without the words, but it absolutely looks like it. And he has a big single barrel shotgun. And he walks through a house with torn down wallpaper and a lot of zombies. And I guess he will shoot them too, because there's an ammo meter.
Yep, absolutely. So it was a side-scroller thing. And the design, as Docs mentioned, he looked very much like almost even like a stereotypical depiction of a redneck, right? Armed with a shotgun, he shoots zombies. He's in this old dilapidated mansion. And Adrian is really into this. Adrian is like loving this. Okay. And this was a way for him to make use of all of his horrible experiences looking at photos at the hospital. And he starts working on death animations for Dave. And I played a little bit of it. And so, for an example, a creature threw a knife at me. Okay. And when it connected, the game completely stopped. And then it showed a couple of frames of Dave with a knife lodged in his head. And I have a picture of that down there. It's just Dave.
Yeah, to the right, you can see it, how he's like completely pale. And his eyes are black, and he's just
right. And
cool. Yeah.
When Romero was testing a build, a zombie punched him in the face, and he saw an animation of Dave's eyes flying out with blood. And something about this completely broke Romero. He just laughed and laughed and laughed, and he said blood, and he started screaming in a game. How fucking awesome is that? He just thought it was great. And Adrian played a bit with adding lots of blood, lots of gore to the game, and Romero loved it. But they're selling it to Softdisk, which has a very broad audience, and Softdisk was not interested in all of the blood and gore, and they made him tone it down. And Adrian was really bummed, and he said, maybe one day we'll be able to make a game and be able to put in as much blood as we want.
What I do notice is that these games still look very infantile, like all very childish, like goofy, funny, and Doom will not look like that.
No.
Doom Doom is a very no bullshit game. Like it has its funny moments, but not as obvious as here.
I would agree. To add to that, they also made a game called Rescue Rover. Here you are.
The alliterations. I hate it.
It was a puzzle game where robots kidnap a dog named Rover, and you play as his owner, a guy named Roger. And in each level, you climb onto a floor with a ladder, and you have to go through a maze, get the dog, and make it back out. You move objects around, like in mirrors around on a grid, and you're either trying to trap robots that try to kill you or like get around them. I have not played this one, but I'm told it has a bit of a dark humor sort of vibe to it.
Yeah, it looks like one of those classic push the box around puzzles. Yeah.
I'm terrible at those kind of games. I do not have the forethought for them.
Me neither.
Yep. My wife is fantastic at that kind of stuff. I'm terrible at it. So
probably means that that she probably didn't fall on her head as much as we did as kids.
Yes, if she only knew how much brain damage I have. Well, maybe she does, and she married me anyway, so that's on her. So
we'd be so smart if we just didn't fuck up as much as children.
You know, my mother did tell me she dropped me on my head once as a child, and she was horrified.
Yeah.
I
I never tell you, but I noticed. Okay. I think kind of John Romero's shit talking is kind of
I turned so
getting to
red.
me.
Oh my god. Fucking hilarious. The smack talk has begun.
It has begun, yes.
Okay. So outside of their
Rescue
obligations to soft disk,
Yes.
your brain damage host is going to skim at this point. They also made 4 other games that they sold to soft disk as well. They were Catacomb 2, Double Catacomb, Double Dangerous Dave, and Dark Designs 3. We do not need to dig into all of these, okay? Apparently, Romero...
Catacomb just was kind of Pac-Man-esque, right? And so they probably just reiterated on that.
Right. Catacomb is like Gauntlet-esque, I would say. If you played the old Gauntlet games, that's kind of how I would describe it. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Romero and Carmack would have coding competitions to see who could convert their games to double high res the fastest, and Carmack would almost always win. He was the better coder in that way. And during this time, if you remember, Carmack was always really fascinated with like 3D games or first-person games, and there weren't really a lot of them in the industry. But he's trying really hard to break into pseudo 3D games, and he really thought that 3D was the next technological advancement. He was not wrong. There had been attempts at mimicking 3D before, but the most common form was flight sims. He had thought that these were really slow, and they were. He preferred fast action games, but putting those two things together, difficult, right? Like, he starts thinking, could you possibly make a game that was in 3D, but also fast? And he tested various iterations. And early in the year, he made a 3D rotating cube and a 2D scaling logo for Dangerous Dave. But since Carmack had not gone to college, in fact, Romero hadn't either, at least not long enough to get a degree, Carmack didn't have the math skills that he needed to program at that level. So he went out and just bought himself a bunch of books on trigonometry and other higher level forms of math and just started teaching himself high level math, like with a book.
And I guess if you have a very certain goal, the motivation really helps grasping the concepts.
I would agree, because you can immediately apply it, right? Like sometimes you'll hear people whine about, why did I learn this math? I never used it, in high school or whatever. I personally think learning for learning's sake is important, but that's a side note. But this, you're right. He knew exactly what he needed to do. He knew exactly how he needed to figure out the math, and then he taught himself it. But even with this, PCs were too slow to be able to render a lot of surfaces at once. So he's like, what if I just make the PC draw walls, not ceilings and floors? And he messed with something called ray casting, where the computer would only render whatever the player was looking at. This is like various iterations of this we'll come up with throughout these episodes, right? Like trying to figure out how to make the game fast, and it's only really showing you what it needs to at that time. And it performed kind of well. It was kind of this like pseudo 3D, and it projected images in a way that gave you the illusion that you were in a full 3D environment. I think later they called it something like 2.5D, right? Like it wasn't fully 3D, it wasn't fully 2D. It's just kind of this weird in the middle. And this whole process takes Carmack 6 weeks, which according to him was 2 weeks longer than he had spent on any of his games ever. And Romero is again impressed. And they talk about what kind of game that they could make with this tech. And they decide it's going to be a game about a character named Brick Sledge, who drives a hover tank through a post-apocalyptic future. I will show you some pictures here. Brick Sledge, he's going to drive through the post-apocalyptic future. And the entire point of the game is you could drive around in a tank shooting weird mutated enemies, and you're trying to save people and get them out of the level before a nuclear bomb drops. And they called it Hover Tank 3D.
These guys have the creativity of 12-year-olds, which I appreciate. But this already looks like Doom.
It's getting there,
roughly.
right?
It's getting there, yeah.
You
Especially the demon monster thingy to the right already looks like the Demon Lord, or what the name is of that one enemy.
Yeah, the mutants are like, to describe it to all of you, it's kind of like this red creepy creature with eyes sort of on the side of its head and like a big mouth and like weird nostrils, and it's like, yeah, it's like a dark sort of red marching toward you. Yeah, so Hover Tank 3D. So let's clear a couple things up about Hover Tank 3D. Now, this game is what we might consider to be a first-person shooter, right? It's first person, you can see, and you are shooting a gun, even though it's the gun of a tank. Some have thought this, and some of the later games we'll talk about, as maybe what pioneered or even invented the genre. I just want to note that this is like only sort of true, because there were other attempts at making first-person shooter style games before this. You could even think of Maze War as being sort of the antecedent to this stuff. And so like that's a story for another time. But there had been attempts at this. It's just as we work through these stories, it iterated on and popularized some of this. So like we can't give them full credit for like inventing these things, but some of the trappings that we're used to, I think maybe we could.
I would imagine that the first-person shooter in itself is a genre that is, I would think, obvious that it would have to come up, because it's a perspective that we just very obviously have, like looking out of our own eyes and just seeing what's in front of us. As with other genres, I don't think that's the case. Like if you look at the real-time strategy genre, I don't think that would have been similarly obvious, but I think because there were so many board games that already kind of were going in the direction with the turn-based mode, it was also bound to happen.
Sure.
But if you look at games that I think were not obvious, game genres, I mean, like God games, if you want to mention our old friend Peter Molyneux.
Good old Pete.
Yeah. So I think what you say makes sense. That is very likely that as soon as the technology made it possible, this was bound to show up, because it's a very obvious way of making use of computer technology. Yep.
And I would say that with this game and other games, including Doom and stuff we'll talk about, I've listened to a whole bunch of interviews where they were like, people would be playing our game and they go around a corner and, maybe a mutant walks out from behind a corner that you didn't see, and people would like fall out of their chairs, right? Like they'd be like, oh, because they had not experienced this before, where a game could make you even in a rudimentary way, feel like you were in the game. Like there were just very few examples of it. So anyway,
probably also like there probably was scary games before, but probably also the first entries into shock horror, like even making it feasible that you could induce fear like that using a video game, like shock fear.
Absolutely. Yep. When I think of the first, and we're like, we're a bit out from this episode, but when I think of the first video game that actually frightened me as a child, it was Doom, right? And we'll talk more about that when we get to that episode. There were other games that frightened me as a child. I was very timid, but yes, like just
I was scared of. I was scared of the cave levels in Croc Legend of the Gerbils.
they were eerie. Oh man, like
super scary. Like the little insect enemies that just skitter around. Super scary.
Do you remember? And we're totally on a tangent here. Which, by the way, we have to do a Croc episode at some point. But
yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember the dungeon levels in the last island that were like dark,
so scary.
And they'd have this like really creepy music, and you could hear like little creatures like crying in the background, like right? And I'd just be like, really oh man, I would get chills, like, ooh, yeah.
And I also really stopped having fun with the levels at that point. I was like, okay, I just gotta get through this.
Yes,
I just gotta get out of here.
Oh man, yeah, man, we gotta do a Croc episode at some point. But anyway. Okay, so with all of that, still a huge technological advancement, even with all those caveats. And, you know, as you can see, Docs, it looks pretty ugly, right? Like the walls are like bright blue, dark blue, pink, gray. Like it's like this Technicolor maze, but like fine, right? It was cool for what it was. And Adrian gets really into, again, making the game gory. It's what he likes.
Tyler, this is technically revolutionary.
Uh-huh.
We can shit talk them personally, but let's not talk them technically. This is marvelous.
It is. All right, I'm sorry.
Like, these douchebags made great games.
These little fucking edgelords are out here reinventing the industry with their shit talk and their computer thievery.
I'm not going to pretend that I could make anything close to this. This is awesome.
No.
This looks good.
I'm not going to fucking act like I could make any of this. I'm here to talk about it and maybe make you laugh once or twice.
So
That's all I've got.
I'm so sorry.
That's what people are here for, the snark. They want it.
They are.
So Adrian gets really into the gore.
But it looks rough. You're completely right. It looks rough, yes.
It does. Comparatively, right? Adrian gets into the gore. He could draw all kinds of mutated critters. He can have all kinds of blood. He's excited.
Nice.
And Romero gets to work updating the tile editor that they had used on Dangerous Dave and a bunch of their games up to this point. Like, I don't know that I'd mentioned it, but Romero often in the background was sort of like the person who would work on the tools to allow them to then make levels. So he's kind of like the guy who would make the tool, because in his mind, like a good tool, it makes a good game, right?
Yes.
So Romero credits Carmack for them making their deadline on Hover Tank, and that Carmack put in an incredible amount of programming hours, and it released in the April 1991 edition of Gamer's Edge. And even though it was a landmark game in terms of graphical advancement, it's thought to be a bit lower in status from the other games that they made for a couple of reasons. Some of them we already mentioned, but it didn't have a full release outside of Gamer's Edge, no shareware model, and admittedly, it's kind of clunky to play, right? It's kind of slow. Mm-hmm. It's not particularly great. But the money's rolling in. $5,000 a game from Softisk. They have money coming from Apogee and Commander Keen each month. It's just so shocking to them that they just have all this money. And so because so many of them had been really poor and they really didn't know when this cash flow would end, they're like super frugal with their money at this point. They decide that what they're going to do is they're going to try to come up with another Commander Keen trilogy. And Tom Hall had this idea. He wanted to do a trilogy of trilogies, like George Lucas's original vision for Star Wars, right?
Yes. Yep.
And they wanted this next trilogy to be done by Christmas that year so that Apogee could have it ready for the holiday season. So they're like earlier in the year, right? What they decided to do was experiment with their new tech and design for one episode, which they would give to Softisk for their contract, and then they'd work, on their trilogy to give Apogee. And so in this episode, Carmack experiments with something called parallax scrolling, where the background moves at a different rate than the foreground, right? So it creates depth. Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm sure you've played older games, right? You can see the background will ever so slightly move. It makes you feel like you're in the level, right?
It's still used in modern pixel art games just to make something look like it has depth to it. Yes.
Yep, absolutely. And it makes things look more real in a sense. And so, again, he just keeps running into, he's struggling with how slow computers are at the time. And so, what he did is he writes this program that would temporarily cache images on your screen so that the PC just didn't have to redraw them, right? So that then it's even just saved, right? So that's an even bigger speed increase. And so he wrote this program so you could save these images together even to make it easier to recall. During this time, Carmack and Romero, they're really kicking into code for what they called the Keen engine. And I've said the word engine a couple of times. Have you ever wondered where the term graphics engine comes from? You want to take a guess?
When you mentioned engines a few minutes ago, I was like, we should do an episode on where engines originated, because this is really interesting, because building an engine is so important to video game design. So I do not know this. I do not know where the term engine comes from.
So there had been, so just for our listeners, an engine is sort of a base of code that you can then create further games with, right? So you've got this stuff ready to go, and out of the box, you can pull from it and do things with it. And there had been instances of like code being reused previously. I think that even Nintendo had reused a couple of bits of code here and there. But the term game engine appears to have originated with Romero and Carmack, because they were both car guys, and the engine was the heart of the car. It powers the rest of the car. So they called it the engine, and that's where the term supposedly came from.
That's so interesting.
I never would have thought of it, right? So, they have this next episode out by May, and then the team starts thinking, cool, so like, what can we do with this engine now? And Romero, he has this idea. What if we licensed the engine out to other developers? Okay. In doing so, it might allow other developers to save on development time, and then we could also make money off of it. So we're helping them, we're helping us, right? So they're like, if we're going to do this, we need to...
The engines itself have turned into a product. Like, just look at the Unreal Engine. Look at Unity. These are all toolboxes that are products by themselves.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And so he's like, okay, if we want to show people that they want to buy our engine, we have to show it off. And so they call Scott from Apogee, and he brings a bunch of developers to meet the team. I think it was at the lake house. And they just want to show off how their engine can be used to make things. And from what I can tell, the Keen engine is the first time a company tried to license out their code in this way. At the lake house, a bunch of developers hang out. They show them the tech. They coded a quick Pac-Man knockoff in real time. So Adrian draws all the assets. Tom makes the level and sounds. Carmack does all the coding. They all just sit there and they use their engine and they whip up a quick game. Romero runs the whole thing, walks everybody through the process. He's kind of like their little master of ceremonies. He's walking through what everybody's doing. And they show it off. They have this little party. And they only had a single license from the seminar, and it was to a developer at Apogee named Jim, and they decided on a revenue sharing deal that would give id a percentage of the earnings. And Jim takes the Keen engine and he makes a game called Biomenace. But after the game was done, Jim didn't license the engine for future games, and then the team realized that they had an issue with this deal. Once you bought the source code, like the full source code, you just had it. It was yours. It was in your hands. You didn't need to buy it again for future games, right? You could take that entire code, you could reuse it, you could modify it, whatever you want to do. And so I should really say, I won't talk too much about this, but Romero and Carmack were very into this sort of free sharing ethos of programming. People should be able to use our stuff and iterate on it and do things with it, but they wanted to be paid for it. Share the wealth, right? You've used our work. But some rumors started flying around that maybe the Keen engine code was being shared around within Apogee to make other games, and that they weren't paying id any of the cash. And id, they just decide that they're just not going to check with Apogee. They're just not going to find out if this is true. They're going to let it go. They're going to keep their business relationship. But they're like, we learned a lesson on how we do this, and we're going to change our model.
Yeah, don't ask questions you don't want answers for.
Right?
And they probably had the right, if they had the idea that this could be done, everybody else would have had the same idea.
Right, exactly.
So
By June of 1991, Apogee was making close to $60,000 a month on shareware. And Commander Keen, top of the shareware charts. id was averaging...
That's a ton of money.
Oh, it's so much, right? id was averaging between what they had at Softdisk and what they had at Apogee. They were making $35,000 a month. But again, there's rumors sort of flying around what's going on within Apogee. We will talk about them again later. And Romero starts to be like, I don't know if this partnership is a good fit, right? And he starts wondering if maybe id should handle game distribution themselves. And he mentions it to Carmack, like maybe we could distribute our own games. And Carmack is basically like, let's not do anything that would distract us from making games. And I think that this is a refrain Carmack will have throughout this entire series. Carmack is laser focused on, let's make one thing and make it the best we possibly can and put our full energy into it. No other distractions. Okay.
Carmack mentioned before that he's really happy if when other people just take on all the financial stuff, all the marketing stuff, everything that would distract him from what he wants to do.
He just wants to code.
Because that is a huge job.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially the way they are upscaling, it will turn into a bigger and bigger job.
Oh, it gets, yes, this is gonna slowly grow.
And I mean, which year is this? This is like 1993, 1992?
1991. Yep, we're in the summer of 1991.
The computer game industry is gonna ramp up really heavily in like a few years.
Yes. So their focus is like, okay, let's make more Commander Keen. And this time Tom would come up with the story. And I couldn't get an exact date here, but Tom officially left Softdisk and he joins the team. So he was a full owner. Okay. And the plan was that they would again release the first episode of shareware, the remaining 2 episodes as a paid product. And for these games, Tom decides he's going to tone down the violence a little bit because he had started receiving letters from parents who didn't like their kids playing games of like, there's like alien corpses around, right? And he's like, okay, like I guess I can like concede that. So Tom decides that what he's going to do is he's going to make Commander Keen have a stun gun. By August, they had a prototype of Commander Keen. Commander Keen 4, rather. Romero said he was always focused a bit on the business side of things because nobody else at the company really had any business experience. And if you think back to Romero's story, in one way or another, by this point, Romero estimates that he had sold, not just made, sold 23 different games at this point. Okay. So getting the games into people's hands, in his opinion, is just as important as making a good game. So he starts thinking, okay, we need to bring in a business guy. Earlier that year, Romero had been talking to a guy in Canada named Mark Rain, and he had sent them a list of bugs in Commander Keen 2. Okay. And he and Romero get to talking, and Romero asks him if he wants to beta test the next Commander Keen games. And this guy's like, that'd be cool, but what if instead I help you make business deals for your company? And this guy is like from the business world, and he's making like $100,000 a year at his job. And like, it is just kind of like, okay, sure. Like, but we're not going to pay you. We're like leery. Like, if you want to do this, let's do this. You've already got enough money from your other job. We're a fledgling company. We don't want to dip into our cash reserves right now. Let's talk this out. So Mark flies down to Shreveport and he meets with them. And there's some hesitancy, especially from Carmack, but they agree that they're going to bring Mark on for 6 months as a trial period, and he would take the role as president of id. And I think I have a picture here. Yeah, there's Mark Rain. It's the youngest picture I could find of Mark Rain.
He looks like such a business guy.
He really does. He's got his little collar. He's got his cropped haircut. He looks like he could sell you a car right off the street if you'd never met him before.
He looks like he can have an everyday conversation with a stranger. Like unlike all the other guys in this team.
Right. Okay, so by August, so they bring him on. He's their temporary president. By August of 1991, the team is like, maybe it's time to leave Shreveport. And you know, like they've broken up sort of with Softdisk here, and Romero had started dating Beth, that woman I mentioned previously, and she and Romero, like, they also want out of Shreveport. They're done. And Tom is like, what if we go to Madison, Wisconsin? And if you remember very briefly, I mentioned that Tom was from Madison, Wisconsin. It's his hometown. It's where he had gone to college. And Carmack is willing because he's like, if this is what you guys want to do, I don't really care. I just want to code, like whatever. So there's this.
He was like, leave me the fuck alone. Like, I don't know. Wherever we go, just take my PC, just take me, and then let me code again.
Yes, put me in my cave, my coding cave, right?
Stop talking to me. I don't have time for this.
Yes. Now there's this other guy I hadn't mentioned earlier, and I'm only going to mention him like once or twice because he's very like vestigial to the story. But there's this guy Jason who like lived with them and he worked at Softdisk, but he didn't really do anything with the team. Okay, and he's just kind of like
Jason,
right? And he's just kind of like, I'll go too. I'll go to Wisconsin too. And they're all kind of like, okay, sure. Like it seems like his heart isn't in it, but like whatever, man, you could come along. However,
he's like reverse Adrian. Like Adrian was dragged along without wanting, and Jason came along, but nobody wanted him.
yes, exactly. And but they couldn't convince their friend Jay. Jay couldn't come along. He wanted to stay at Softdisk for a while. He's leery about uprooting his entire life and moving to Madison, Wisconsin for this new startup. And they told him that if he didn't want to come with the company, he would have to give up his 10% stake. And he agrees. And he leaves id to keep working at Softdisk. Okay?
And Jason becomes new Jay.
We have Jay at home. Adrian also had to kind of be convinced to go because he had lived in Shreveport his entire life, but they convince him and he uproots.
Convinced. As if they convinced. They just took him.
So, I have a picture here.
Oh man, that's on the other side of the USA.
It is.
Boy.
Yes. We've gone from the south of the USA to the north of the USA, right in the middle, basically.
So explain to me, why do they go there?
Just because they wanted to leave. They wanted out of Shreveport, and they're kind of done, and they just picked a place kind of randomly. And so Romero and Tom, they fly up to Madison, and it's this stark contrast to Shreveport. It's this college town. It's the fall. The leaves in the atmosphere are just really lovely. They're really into it. And so they find some apartments that are close together. Here's a picture of the apartment complex. It's really nothing special. So that they could collaborate, and they have a separate 3-bedroom apartment that they rent that's going to become their office space. And it was like it had like 2 stories. So they decide that they're going to put Carmack upstairs in the office. He's going to live in the office and he's just going to come downstairs and he's going to work during the day. Okay. And it all seemed like very efficient, but there was some mixed feelings about these living arrangements, and everybody's not really sure what to think about this yet, but they're like, fuck it, let's do it. Let's go. So Carmack, Romero, Adrian, Tom, and hanger-on Jason, they all throw their stuff into a single moving truck and they move to Madison, Wisconsin.
Jason just walks through the door and, where do I sleep? On the couch. I don't know.
You don't get a room, Jason. You get to sleep on the floor, buddy.
How did you get here? We didn't put you in a car.
Yeah, he just appears. They're like, fuck, we're so glad we ditched Jason. And then like he walks through the door. Hey guys. Really weird. We had a scheduling error.
I like these toilets, guys.
Oh man. Sorry, I'm just so far down this bit where like I imagine like one of them goes to go into the bathroom and they lift the seat and Jason pops out of the fucking toilet like a toilet genie and he's like, "Hey guys, what games are we working on today?" Anyway, so by September 1st, they're set up at their new office and they turn their attention back to their games. Next up is finishing the Commander Keen trilogy. And I read some stuff from this time that claimed Romero and Carmack, they are just perfectly synced up at this time. They are in lockstep. And they just knew exactly how to tunnel, how to get things done. They're cultivating this fantastic working relationship. And it was so hard to pull them away that people on the outside struggled to pull them away. One story goes that Beth, Romero's girlfriend, came over to the apartment one night with a bunch of women, and they're all in these like outfits and they're like trying to do their best to distract the team from game development. And after a while, this is not working. And she threw her hands up and loudly said, Why can't we just have our men come home and have sex with us? And Romero just calmly responds, because we're working.
Is this story told from Romero's perspective? Like, did you read this in his book?
I did
Because this
not.
also, like, this fits into his 13-year-old mindset. Like, these women just were all over us. I have so much sex. I'm such a sexy man. Like,
And I was so...
I have a girlfriend in Canada.
I was so focused on my games that I wasn't even going to go bone because that's how committed I was.
Yeah.
No, I actually read this.
I do not believe this story.
I told you some of these I'm not sure, but I read this in the one book, Masters of Doom. This was not in Romero's book. I assume if he had put it, he didn't put it in there because it might have been mildly embarrassing whether or not it was true. So, but
Yeah, maybe.
okay. So around this time, Romero asked Scott Miller if he knows anybody who made MIDI music because they wanted to step their audio quality up a bit. And Scott recommends a guy named Bobby Prince. Do I have a picture? There's Bobby Prince. Okay, he's like this older guy.
Whoa, old man.
Yeah, a lot older than the team. And Bobby Prince is this interesting backstory. I've listened to some interviews with Bobby Prince, and he has a very strong Southern accent. And his backstory, we won't dig too far, is like that he was in Vietnam. He led a platoon in Vietnam. He got out of Vietnam and he became a lawyer. And then he joined a soul band called the Jesters and got really into music. And so Scott knows Bobby from one way or another. I think he had seen some work Bobby had done on somewhere on the internet. And Bobby sends them a MIDI tune that he had made over their modem, and they're like, this is great. This has to go in our game. So they hire Bobby on as a contractor, okay, so that they could sort of up the sound standard of their games. And they're just about finished with Keen 4 at this time. And Mark Rain, their temporary president, calls them and tells the team that he got them a retail publishing deal with a company called FormGen. Do I have it here? I don't have it here. We'll get to what that is in a minute. He tells them that he signed them up for a deal where FormGen would publish a new Commander Keen game so that they could sell it by the holidays. But Commander Keen 4 wasn't done. Commander Keen 5 hadn't been started. They owed Gamer's Edge 2 more games that year, and FormGen now also wants a third Commander Keen game. That's 5, or I guess a chapter, like a game of their own. 5 games in 4 months. Too much. But Mark had already signed the deal. It was done. Romero.
I think Mark is going to lose his job.
This was a challenge that the death schedule couldn't solve, Romero says.
No.
The team gets together and decides they're going to shorten the Keen trilogy to 2 games, okay? And then the third episode would be its own game, and they would give that to FormGen, and that would be the retail thing. So they're going to make 3 Keen episodes, 4 and 5. 4th will be shareware. 5th will be the one you buy from the shareware. 6th will be the one that's on shelves. And this is the only way that they can figure out how they're going to thread this needle because they just don't have time. And even with it, it's going to be close. And they talked also about, like, even if they could cancel the deal with FormGen, they didn't want to once it had been made because getting onto store shelves was like big for them. They had never been on store shelves before. When the guys tell Scott from Apogee about the deal, he is not thrilled. He told them, quote, "You're breaking the magic formula of the trilogy. If you release a shareware game and don't let people buy the full trilogy, it is not going to sell as well." But they told Scott that they couldn't invent more time in the day and they had to do it this way. And Scott, he has to go in on the gamble, right? Like, what choice does he really have? So this is what they go with. The Commander Keen games progress for a while. The team focuses on Keen 6 for FormGen, even though they technically hadn't made Keen 5 for Apogee yet. So they're making the shareware. They hadn't made 5, but they're working on the retail release. Timeline's weird. On the side, Carmack keeps working on what he's really interested in, 3D first-person shooters. Now, there's a couple of very lightly conflicting stories here, but in one of them, Romero tells him that he had read about this new tech called texture mapping, or like he had seen it, someone showed it to him, it doesn't matter. Texture mapping, where you could come up with a pattern, and then instead of a blank background, the computer could create a pattern of something. So remember in Hover Tank, the walls were just blue or red, right?
Yep.
You could take Hover Tank and you could maybe make bricks or wall patterns or whatever the hell you wanted it to be. And Carmack is interested.
You map a texture to certain surfaces that you defined using mathematical vertices. Yes.
Exactly. So Carmack is like, cool, this is neat. I'm going to start working on this and, make it into a game. And so the game he makes was a first-person character-based shooter called Catacomb 3D: The Descent, which appeared as part of Gamer's Edge in November of 1991. This
has so many elements of Doom already.
Yeah, you can see it, right? You've got the different walls, right? You've got some of the creepy critters. You've got scary enemies. And to describe it all to you, just
got his face as a health indicator.
Right? You can see on the right, the character's face looks fine. But in the bottom middle here, the character's face, he looks all skeletal, like he's been messed up, right?
Yep.
So it was called Catacomb 3D. In other places, it might have been called Catacombs 3. It was the third installment of Carmack's Catacomb game series. And in it, you take control of the wizard Petten Everhale, who is going down into some catacombs to defeat a lich and save his friend. And if I remember correctly, don't exactly quote me on this one, but I think the lich and some of the enemies were references to things in Carmack's D&D campaign. So there's a couple little references in there, right? But what's unique about this is, in this game, you could see the wizard's hand in front of you. So it's like you're reaching out, right? And you could see the hand shooting fireballs. And it was intended that you'd sit there and it was like your hand was shooting the fireballs. And it is thought that this is the first example of a character-based first-person shooter. Not the first-person shooter, but the first one with a character that you could see parts of the character. The game was very fast. It had smooth movement in any direction. It's all very speedy compared to games at that time. And it's thought to be that this is a major breakthrough in 3D graphics tech. And the team thought that it was fun tech to work with, but, maybe just the game itself wasn't as fun as some of their other offerings, right? It's cool. It's a breakthrough, but it's still not fun. It doesn't have that great core loop. Scott Miller, though, he's really in on this tech. He loves this. And he tells them that he wants to make something similar that could be sold as shareware. We will come back to this. Okay, so they're full speed ahead. They're working on Keen 6 for FormGen's physical release. It's a long story, but the team, they're so focused on making the games that they don't realize that they need to make box art because they've just done shareware before. You didn't have to make things on a shelf, right? And so a lot of studios would just outsource that, right? Long story short, they end up getting the company who designed Lipton tea boxes to make their box art. What a random thing. Why? I don't know. Adrian gives them some art he had made for the game. This is what it looked like. When the box shows up, everyone's good. Looks good to you. When the box shows up, everyone's excited, but when they open it up, the room goes silent. Adrian just says, "What the fuck?" They thought this looks like a cereal box with 5 different fonts. And if you look at it, it does actually have 5 different fonts.
Did they look at they are not that self-aware, are they? I said it looks fine because all of their previous designs were about the same quality.
Right?
Sure, yeah, they're correct. There's 5 different fonts, but they didn't really pay attention to game design, quality or consistency up to this point.
Well, and also if you're going to outsource all of this stuff, then I don't want to say that they're wrong for not liking this box, but also if you're going to go, we only care about making games, leave the marketing to someone else, and then someone does the marketing and you don't like it, that seems ever so lightly hypocritical. Just is all I'm going to say.
Yes, absolutely. I think it looks fine.
I think it looks fine too, especially for 1991.
I understand the criticism, and maybe that was their entry into getting more critical about their design choices, which is an important step that they will have to make soon.
Right. Yes, you're absolutely right. Now, they go back to FormGen, and they're like, we want a different box. And let me show you the actual box that they went with. Okay. I think this is a lot cooler, right? Isn't this way better?
Shit.
You want to?
Yeah, fuck. Okay, yeah.
You want to describe it?
Describe this?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, the left one was just quirky, an in-game little snapshot, and really, it does look like a cereal box. Mm-hmm. And the right one is it's not photorealistic, but it looks like the cover art of these sci-fi pulp fiction books, if you read Perry Rhodan, stuff like that, a real good Perry Rhodan cover with Commander Keen, like almost drawn photorealistically in the front. Looks really cool. I love this. This is like top-notch cover art design.
Yeah, I love it too. I think it's great. And if you look closely, there's like a lot of really fun little details in there. Like, they drew his shoes to look like Converse. His helmet has cracks in it and it's been taped up, right? Like you've got like the ship, the planets in the background. You've got a little like sort of picture here, like a little vignette almost of him shooting at the alien, which is like, if you look at the box art on the left, it's actually a drawn version of that scene, right?
Absolutely.
It's really cool. I thought it was great.
Someone put a lot of thought into this. Yeah.
Yep. Now, interestingly, years later, someone shows up to Romero and they say, "Can you sign my Commander Keen box?" And they handed him the one on the left, and he's like, "What the fuck?"
Oh.
It appears
Where did you get this from?
Right. It appears that FormGen approved the old Keen box to be sold in Canada, but not the US. And like, no one really knows how this happened. And even when you go back and ask some people like how this happened, no, like there's no good answer because it's so long ago. The guess is that they probably had already started producing the box. And since the team lived in the US, they're like, fuck it, sell the old boxes in Canada because they're never going to go to Canada and see it anyway. Right. So there's some rare Keen boxes.
This is like how
floating
collector's
around.
editions appear, like naturally. Like this is now, if you have this box sitting around somewhere, it's probably worth a ton of money.
Yep. Yeah, I thought that was a really neat little thing. So,
yeah.
Okay, so the game is finished on November 10th, 1991, and they would ship it to stores in December. When they held the final box in their hands, it was another moment where the team felt like they had made it. By the end of November, they also sent off Catacomb 3D to Gamer's Edge, and they start working on Keen 5, because remember, they had to get the retail of Keen 6 out before they did 5.
Yes.
Around this time, I read that their living situation was getting kind of weird. There were arrests in the complex for drug dealing. Someone had stolen all of the gas from their cars. Adrian had an issue where his waterbed, you guys remember, any of you old enough to remember waterbeds? Because I do. His waterbed like broke and he was sleeping on the floor. Romero discovered one day he peeked in on Carmack's room, which remember was upstairs from the office. Carmack never had bought a bed. He was just like, his entire room was just a pillow, a lamp, a stack of books, and a blanket. And he asked, like, Romero asked him about this, and Carmack says he doesn't need a mattress. And Romero felt like really sorry for him, and one day just went out and bought him a mattress and said, "Dude, it's time you get a good night's sleep." But that's how focused he was, right?
Yeah.
He's just like, not even going to buy a mattress. I don't even need one. Who cares?
Yeah, and not also maybe there's like aspects of self-punishment there, or like, I don't know. Don't want to get too psychological about this guy, but it seems like there's issues.
Like, it does in this way. That's really weird, but
like inability to take care of yourself is often like a sign of having just trouble with other things.
Yeah. So, another thing going on at this time, to those of you who have not been to the area of the U.S. that Madison, Wisconsin is in, it gets crazy cold. So when they had visited Madison, they went in the fall. It was really nice. The college is in and everybody's so happy and we're all drinking our little lattes or whatever. And it's so exciting. And let's, I'll go for a walk with my dog. And then it's like fucking frigid. It's like the coldest shit ever. And
gets so cold up there, right?
Mm-hmm. And so they're kind of like, wait, this is an oversight. Like we never even thought to think, does it get cold in the winter? And all these people are like living in Texas, right? Like super warm. So they're just like, there's just no reason for us to go outside pretty much at this point. So they just spend all this time inside these apartments on top of each other at all times. And like, they're playing D&D on the weekends, they're hanging out, they're playing video games, but there's like tensions with this situation because they're all on top of each other. Romero and Tom are just constantly making jokes. They're making alien noises. They're screeching. Jason, Carmack's friend, was just turning into a fifth wheel. So they just gave him a game, like a one-off that they could use, that he could put together real quick to fulfill their soft disc game requirements. I I think it was like a Mahjong game. I can't even remember. And it took them, so they're just like all on top of each other. They're playing D&D. They're like screeching. They're like, madness is coming. And in the middle of December, they finish Keen 5. Okay, so they knock that out. And even with that very short of a timeline, Romero says that he thinks that Keen 5 is the best of the bunch. And at the end of the year, they take stock. They had shipped 13 games that year. In 1 year, 13 games.
That is so much. That's crazy. That's like, they kind of showed that they could do it because they had that one problem where they had to do 5 games in 4 months. Cat, stop meowing at me.
Oh, that's a
I
cat.
have to pick up. It is a cat. I have to pick up Cat because she's like, I'm home. Let me tell you a story of the things I've done outside.
Yes. Father, I have murdered tonight. Gaze
Yeah,
upon
probably
your
yes.
prizes.
They wanted to do 5 games in 4 months, and they did 13 and 12, which kind of is similar insane odds. So that is really crazy. And they didn't grow any, like they didn't hire people. They
No.
like with a lot of studios, we always have these. They have their like second big hit, and they use their money to get more people that can get more games, and they just didn't do it. They just stayed small and agile.
Yes, and I will say one thing that I've noticed is even as things ramp up for id, their hiring is very slow. It's very slow. They'll be like, we have established that there is a need. This thing has grown bigger than than it should be, than we can handle with 5 people or whatever. So let's hire a person. And they'll hire like 1 or 2 people when they start to ramp up. They're very small. They're very efficient. Everyone has a role, and they do it.
And they are like super skeptical of other people, right? Because they feel like that the team that they have is good.
Yep.
And whenever someone new comes in, they're like, we don't trust this person. We are not sure. Especially like Carmack seems like someone that just does not want to trust people.
Yeah, it seems it. Yeah, and he also is very leery, at least from my reading, of just like anything that isn't small team, hyper focuses on one game and does nothing else, right? Okay, but 13 games in a year is still a lot, and it's insane to me. So a bunch of them just take time off for the holidays. Romero takes his girlfriend Beth to California. He sees his kids. Carmack stays in Wisconsin. He had decided to upgrade his workstation, and he needed to be in person to get it because he was getting something really high tech. I have a picture of it here on the left. It is called a Next Station, and it was made by Steve Jobs' new company at the time. It is a massive upgrade over working with MS-DOS, and it was basically built from the ground up for software development. Carmack would be paying the delivery guy, when he showed up, $11,000 for the device. For fun, I converted this. That is $25,000 in US money today. If you convert it, it's maybe around 22,000 euros. And because I know there are a bunch of you listening in Australia, that's about 39,000 Australian dollars. Insane. It's so much money.
And he gave that to a delivery guy.
Yes.
Just to run and do it. And the delivery guy looks on the invoice and is like, okay, you owe me $11,000.
Yeah,
is this right? And it's like, yeah, I got the money in cash right here, and he hands it like in a little paper bag. And the delivery driver's like, oh fuck, I have to drive for 5 hours carrying $11,000 in my bag. I have to survive this somehow.
The guy at the door is like talking to him, and he's like, the last time I bought a computer off somebody like this, it was from a kid who was in juvie. Pass it over here, man. You got the shit. But jokes aside, there's this really famous story where in order to like get the check, he needed a cashier's check. Okay. So like kind of like a bank check, right? That you'd go and get. That's like a promise of the money, not like a personal check. It's too much. So he has to go to the bank, and he's there all alone. Everybody else is on vacation, but his car had died in Shreveport, and he just hadn't gotten another because he's just coding all day. What's the fucking point to get another car at this point, right? So he had to walk in the snow. It's like this horrible, horrible snowstorm. And he has to walk in the snow to the bank on foot to get the check. and get this computer. And he's like very displeased, but he gets it all set up and he just digs into it while everybody's gone. And when they get back, they're like, this is a huge upgrade for us. And they all start talking about the stuff they want to make. So they're all back, right? You know, Romero's seen his family. Everybody else sort of scatters a bit. They're all recharged and they're kind of ready to jump into the next Keen trilogy. Because remember, it's supposed to be a trilogy of trilogies. And they do this for about 2 weeks. And here's a mock-up of what that was going to look like. Some of the gameplay. They only work on this for about 2 weeks. And they get a tech demo going. And there's going to be all these new features. The graphics look great. It's getting closer to, like, you know, what they want it to be. But they're just not feeling it, right? They had made so many Commander Keen games now. They're burning out. And so one night, Romero tells the room, just silent, and he just tells the room that he's not excited to work on Keen anymore. And Adrian turns around and says something to the effect of, he's not either. And Carmack had this thing where he would just kind of go, Like, that's like, he would just like, that was his like agreeance or like, sure. He just go, So Carmack turns around and he goes, And they start talking about it. And they're just like, we want to work on something else. Tom does not want to work on something else. Tom wants to work on Commander Keen. This is his baby. They had made a plan. It's the trilogy of trilogies. And like, what about these 2 weeks that they had spent on this tech demo? And the rest of the team is just kind of like, and I'm very much summarizing here, fuck the tech demo. We need something new. We need something fun. And they start talking about the direction of the company. And they all agree that 3D is the future and that Carmack's engines are pushing them further and further toward a first-person game. And Tom's like kind of unhappy about this, as you might imagine, right? Because he just really wants to do Keen. And he starts thinking like, okay, cool. Let's start spitballing what it's going to be then, right? And he thinks in his mind, right? Like, if I do this, we'll go back to Keen later. Right? Like, we'll get this out of the way and then we can revisit Keen. So he goes all in and he's coming up with all these like goofy things. And he comes up with this idea that would use Hover Tank's premise. And it was called It's Green and Pissed. That was going to be the name of the game. And I actually found an old article I read where for a brief moment, somebody asked them something and they said, oh, our next game's going to be called It's Green and Pissed. So, but that was like thrown out so quickly. Like, I can't even imagine how short this timeline was. And they're like, okay, this is funny, but it's not really innovative. We already did a fucking game about mutants escaping, right? And then at one point, Romero just says, we need to do something cool. You know, it'd be really fucking cool if we remade Castle Wolfenstein and did it in 3D.
Yes.
And that is where we will end our episode for the day.
I feel like this is a wild ride. But it's all coming together. It kind of makes sense where this is going. So I really appreciate the perspective. I talk shit on these guys a lot, but these are real people that have made a real livelihood of these. So I hope we understand that this is all snarkiness. Like we don't.
Hey, if we ever interview you someday, it's nothing personal.
One might understand why some of the decisions that they have made might come along as like kind of douchey.
Yes. I also think, and this is something that I have to like really center myself in, is like 1991 was a different fucking time, man. Right? Like, it's really easy for us to look back in 2025 and be like, oh, what a really douchey thing to say. Or even further, it's really easy for us to look back as men in our 30s and go, what really douchey decisions, or oh, what a... But like, we were all young once, right?
We were
like,
all like that. Every single one of us was like that. Yes,
right? So
absolutely.
like, you know,
and what I also must say is that the decisions that they make are also in many parts very brave, because if you are that young and you are kind of everything, like after school everything opens up in front of you, and if you then manage, especially if you come from like an environment that has been so hostile or so difficult for you, if you then manage to always take a step forward and move on and kind of keep running into the future with an open mind like that, that is something I really admire. So I think what a lot of the things that they did show a lot of courage as well. Like these were guys that really dared to kind of just go to the edge and see what's over there.
Mm-hmm. And see where they could themselves step over the line. And I also think it's you mentioned how small the team was. As you'll see as we move through this, having such a small team allowed them to be very agile, right? Like they could make so I don't even know if I mentioned it, but they always joked that their unofficial motto at id was "We are the wind." Okay, that they could just at any time just go, fuck it, we're not going to work on Commander Keen anymore. And in a couple of days, they've decided that they're going to do a remake of Castle Wolfenstein, right? And just a totally different thing. Yep. Sometimes even in the middle of a night, right? And we'll talk about that more in the next episode. These sort of bit flips, as we'll call them. Okay.
Thank you for all this. This was really nice.
I'm glad. This is, I've truly been working on this for like over a year, and I'm really excited to tell these stories and get it all out there. It's been so much fun. So... okay. Any last thoughts before
I must say also, this is our 30th episode, right?
It is.
Episode 30, so kind of a small anniversary. Congratulations, we did it.
We did it.
Good.
Yeah.
So let's get into 31 in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Or we will probably record it right now, but then like pretend that it's in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Whenever this hits you, I hope that you enjoyed this, and there are many more stories to tell. All right, friends. Thank you so much.
Guys.
Catch you later. Thanks to Docs. Thanks to all of you for listening, and we'll see you for the next one. Later.
Bye. Yeah, that's a good stopping point.
Yes, Andre, cut my previous thing about me saying this is a good stopping point, if you would. Thank you.
Or just leave it in.
No, don't, because then someone will listen to the episode and they'll say, oh no, Tyler says it's a good stopping point, and then they'll stop listening to the episode and they won't hear the rest. You're going to have to pick which of us you like better here, Andre, in this decision. I'm sorry. You have to pick between your podcast parents. Yeah.
Podcast dad and who's podcast mom?
I've got the hair for it.
Well, if we take the standard of this like set of episodes, podcast mom would be present and podcast dad would just not take part. So it's podcast dad and your podcast mom.
Yes, and I'm right now. I'm a stay-at-home mom, right? I call myself house husband for Andrea, and when she says you really don't have to do that, I go house husband, and then I just do it. So. All right.
I'll stop recording now.
I will as well.
I hope you enjoyed this, Andre. Let's do the clapping to make Andre even prouder than before.
Yep. All right. I'll give you a 1, 2, 3, and then at the end of 3, we'll do the thing. 1, 2, 3.
Perfect.
All right. Yeah, we're getting it. That's right. We've trained for years, and now we've done it.
My entire life has been leading up to this.
Yep. I've worked so hard to be able to synchronize the Mario's theme song using claps to my friend in Germany. Yep. Couldn't ask for more in 2025.